The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue was one of those places where people went to be seen rather than to drink coffee. Chrome fixtures gleamed under recessed lighting, and the price of a latte could feed a family for a day. It was exactly the kind of place where Chen liked to work. He sat in his usual corner booth, MacBook open, expensive watch catching the light just so. At 32, Derek had perfected the art of looking successful without actually being successful. The watch was a knockoff. The laptop was leased. The designer's suit had been bought at a consignment shop. But nobody looked that closely. They just saw what they wanted to see, a young entrepreneur on his way up. And that's exactly what made his business model work. Derek wasn't in tech. He wasn't in finance. He was in the much older, much simpler business of taking money from people who had it and disappearing before they realized what happened. He didn't think of himself as a con artist. That sounded crude. He preferred investment consultant or opportunity broker. Semantics, maybe, but it helped him sleep at night. He was reviewing his latest marks. That's what he called them privately, though never out loud, when she walked in. She was exactly what Derek had been waiting for. Mid-20s, blonde hair that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, designer handbag that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and that particular kind of wide-eyed expression that Derek had learned to recognize. Money without street smart. Privilege without experience. The perfect combination. She ordered some complicated drink with extra foam and oat milk, fumbling with her wallet at the counter. Derek watched as she dropped her credit card, black Amex, naturally, and laughed at herself as she picked it up. The barista smiled indulgently, clearly charmed. Derek made his move. As she turned from the counter, drink in hand, Derek stood up just fast enough to create what looked like an accidental collision. Her coffee splashed. Not on her, Derek was too skilled for that, but enough to create a moment of chaos. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Derek said, immediately pulling napkins from the nearby dispenser. "I wasn't watching where I was going. Please, let me buy you another drink." No, it's totally fine," she said, her voice carrying that particular vocal fry that Derek associated with wealthy California girls. "I'm such a klutz anyway. This is like the third time this week I've spilled something." She laughed, and Derek laughed with her, and just like that, the ice was broken. "I'm Derek," he said, extending his hand. "Sarah," she replied, shaking it. Her grip was soft, uncertain. "Perfect." "Look, I feel terrible about this," Derek continued. "At least let me buy you another coffee. And maybe I could join you? I've been staring at spreadsheets all morning and could use a break from financial projections." He said financial projections with just the right amount of casual confidence. Not bragging, just stating a fact. The kind of thing that would make her curious. "Sure," Sarah said brightly. "I'd love the company. I'm supposed to meet my friend, but she just texted that she's stuck in traffic." They sat down, and Derek began the performance he'd perfected over 3 years and 47 victims. Well, victims was such a harsh word. He preferred to think of them as learning experiences. After all, what was $10,000 or $20,000 to people who had millions? A rounding error. A lesson in not being so trusting. "So what do you do?" Sarah asked, sipping her replacement latte. Derek leaned back, allowing himself a modest smile. "I run a venture capital fund. Small, boutique operation. We focus on emerging tech companies before they hit the mainstream market." "Oh wow," Sarah said, her eyes widening. "That sounds amazing. Like you invest in startups and stuff?" "Exactly," Derek said. "The key is getting in early, before everyone else sees the potential. Last year, we invested in a company that's now worth 50 times what we paid. Our investors made life-changing money." None of this was true. Derek didn't run a venture capital fund. He didn't have investors. The closest he came to legitimate business was filing fraudulent tax returns. That's so cool, Sarah said. I've always wanted to get into investing, but I don't really understand how it all works. My dad handles all my money stuff. There it was. The magic phrase that Derek had been waiting for. My dad handles all my money stuff. Translation: trust fund baby with access to capital but no financial literacy. Derek's pulse quickened, but his expression remained sympathetic and interested. That's smart, having family help. But at some point it's important to understand these things yourself. Financial independence is real independence. Oh my God, yes, Sarah said, leaning forward. That's exactly what I've been telling my dad. I'm 24 years old. I should understand my own finances, right? Absolutely, Derek agreed. And it's not that complicated once you understand the basics. Take venture capital, for example. The concept is simple. You identify promising companies early, invest a small amount, and wait for them to grow. The returns can be extraordinary. For the next 20 minutes, Derek spun an intricate web of half-truths and complete fabrications. He talked about companies that didn't exist, investments that never happened, and returns that were mathematically impossible. And Sarah, sweet naive Sarah, absorbed every word. I have to be honest with you, Derek said, lowering his voice and glancing around as if sharing a secret. We're actually in the middle of closing a new fund right now. Super exclusive opportunity. We're only taking investments from a small group of people. Really? Sarah's interest was piqued. What kind of opportunity? Derek pulled out his laptop, the least one that he'd loaded with fake documents and spreadsheet. This is confidential, but since we've been having such a great conversation, have you heard of quantum computing? Sarah shook her head. It's the next revolution in technology, Derek explained, pulling up a legitimate article about quantum computing that he'd bookmarked specifically for moments like this. Google, IBM, all the major players are racing to develop it. But there's a small company in Austin, Quantum Leap Technologies, that's ahead of everyone else. They've made a breakthrough that could change everything. He showed her the article, then smoothly transitioned to a fake investment prospectus he'd created. It looked professional because Derek had paid a graphic designer on Fiverr to make it look professional. The numbers were impressive. The projections were astronomical. And it was all completely fabricated. My fund is investing $2 million in their Series B round, Derek said. But we're allowing a small number of individual investors to come in alongside us. Minimum investment is $25,000, but we're already almost fully subscribed. He watched Sarah's face carefully. She was interested, but $25,000 was too much. He needed to adjust. Although, Derek said thoughtfully, I like you, Sarah. You seem smart, curious, eager to learn. Tell you what, I could probably get you in for $10,000. It's not standard, but I could make it work. $10,000? Sarah repeated. I know it sounds like a lot, Derek said quickly, but when Quantum Leap goes public, and our projections say that'll happen in about 18 months, that $10,000 could easily be worth $50,000 or $60,000. Maybe more. He pulled up more fake documents, showed her more fabricated data, and slowly, methodically, built a castle in the air. I'd need to think about it, Sarah said, but Derek could hear the interest in her voice. Of course, Derek said smoothly. This is a big decision. Take your time. Although... He glanced at his laptop screen. We're closing the fund this Friday. After that, the opportunity's gone. The artificial deadline. Classic sales tactic. Create urgency, limit time to think, pressure the decision. They talked for another 30 minutes. Derek answered her questions with confidence and false expertise. He showed her his fake LinkedIn profile with hundreds of fake connections. He mentioned a fake office in Midtown that was actually just a WeWork he'd visited once for a meeting. By the time Sarah left, Derek had her phone number and a promise that she'd seriously think about it. He ordered another coffee, paid with cash, never leave a credit card trail, and allowed himself a small smile. This was going to be easy. What Derek didn't know was that Sarah Martinez wasn't her real name. Her real name was Special Agent Sarah Reeves, and she'd been with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit for 6 years. The blonde hair was a wig. The vocal fry was an act. The designer handbag was borrowed from evidence lockup. And the trust fund baby persona was a carefully constructed cover that had taken 3 weeks to perfect. The Bureau had been tracking Derek Chen for 8 months. They knew about the 47 previous victims. They knew about the fake investment schemes, the fabricated companies, the fraudulent documents. They had evidence of wire fraud, securities fraud, and mail fraud. But what they needed was proof of intent, clear, undeniable evidence that Derek knew exactly what he was doing. So they had sent in Sarah. She sat in the back of an unmarked van 2 blocks from the coffee shop, removing the blonde wig and shaking out her natural dark hair. Her partner, Agent Marcus Webb, was monitoring the recording equipment. "Did you get everything?" Sarah asked. Marcus nodded, grinning. "Crystal clear. The idiot practically read us his entire playbook. Quantum Leap Technologies, the Austin Breakthrough, the Series B funding, all fiction, and he knows it." "He's good," Sarah admitted. "If I didn't know better, I might have believed him." "That's what makes these guys dangerous," Marcus said. "They're not stupid. They're smart enough to be legitimate businesspeople, but they choose the easy money instead." Sarah looked at the recording equipment, at the transcripts already being generated by their AI software. How many times did he use the words exclusive opportunity? 7, Marcus said. Also mentioned life-changing returns 4 times, limited time 6 times, and implied he was doing you a special favor at least 10 times. Classic manipulation tactics. Sarah thought about Derek's performance in the coffee shop. The artificial warmth, the calculated vulnerability, the way he made everything seem like a secret being shared between friends. It was impressive in a deeply disturbing way. "What's next?" she asked. "Now we let him think he's winning," Marcus said. "You text him tomorrow, act interested but nervous. Ask more questions. Let him convince you. We want him to commit fully before we spring the trap." "And the money?" "Bureau funds, fully traceable. The moment he accepts a transfer, we've got him on wire fraud. Combined with the recordings and the evidence from previous victims, we're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum." Sarah nodded, but something in her expression made Marcus look at her more closely. "What is it?" he asked. "I just keep thinking about the real victims," Sarah said. "The people who actually lost money to him. There was that teacher in Brooklyn who lost her entire savings. The elderly couple in Queens who gave him their retirement fund. These weren't all rich people who could afford the loss." "I know," Marcus said quietly. "That's why we're doing this." Over the next 3 days, Sarah played her part perfectly. She texted Derek with questions that seemed naive, but were actually designed to get him to incriminate himself further. She expressed concerns that allowed him to reveal more details about his scheme. She acted hesitant so he would push harder. And Derek, confident in his abilities, walked right into every trap. On Wednesday, they met for lunch at an upscale restaurant. Derek picked the place, naturally. Somewhere expensive enough to reinforce his successful image, but not so expensive that it seemed like he was trying too hard. "I've been thinking about the Quantum Leap investment," Sarah said, playing with her salad. "It sounds amazing, but I'm still nervous about committing that much money." "That's completely normal," Derek said reassuringly. "Any smart investor has concerns. That's actually a good sign. It means you're thinking critically. He pulled out his tablet, also leased, and showed her more fabricated documents. Financial projections that looked professional because he'd stolen the template from a real venture capital firm. Testimonials from previous investors, who were actually just stock photos with fake names. I want you to feel comfortable with this decision, Derek continued. So let me show you something. He opened an app that claimed to show his fund's performance. Green numbers everywhere, graphs trending upward, percentage returns that would make Warren Buffett jealous. All fake, all designed to create an illusion of success. These are my actual returns from the last 3 years, Derek said. I'm showing you this because I want you to trust me. I want you to know that this isn't just some random opportunity, it's built on a track record of consistent success. Sarah made her eyes go wide with impression. Wow, those numbers are incredible. They are, Derek agreed. And that's what I can help you achieve. But Sarah, I have to be honest with you. The fund closes in 2 days. Friday at 5 p.m. After that, this opportunity is gone. Sarah bit her lip, a gesture she'd practiced to look uncertain. I want to do it. I really do. But transferring $10,000, that's a lot. It is, Derek acknowledged. But think about what that money could become. In 18 months, when Quantum Leap goes public, you could be looking at $50,000 or more. That could be a down payment on a house. Could be a year of travel. Could be the foundation of real financial independence from your family. He was good. Sarah had to admit it. He knew exactly which buttons to push. The promise of independence. The fear of missing out. The artificial urgency. Okay, Sarah said, making her voice sound both excited and nervous. I'll do it. How does this work? Derek's smile was genuine for the first time. This was the moment he'd been working toward. It's simple. I'll send you the wire transfer information. You send the funds to our escrow account, totally secure, managed by a third party, and then I'll send you all the documentation confirming your investment. Can I use Venmo or something? Sarah asked, playing dumb. Derek laughed. For $10,000? No, we'll need to do a bank wire transfer. More secure for large amounts. Okay, Sarah said. I can do that. When? The sooner the better, Derek said. Actually, if you could do it by tomorrow, I could guarantee your spot. Otherwise, I might have to give it to someone else on the wait list. There was no wait list. There were no other investors. There was no fund. But Sarah nodded eagerly. Tomorrow morning, she promised. I'll go to my bank first thing. Derek raised his wine glass. To your financial future. Sarah clinked her glass against his. To new opportunities. Neither of them mentioned that they meant very different things. Thursday morning, Sarah sat in a conference room at the FBI field office in Lower Manhattan. Around the table were Marcus, their supervisor agent Chen, an assistant U.S. attorney named Jennifer Brooks, and 2 other agents from the Financial Crimes Unit. We're ready to move, Marcus said, pulling up the case file on the screen. He's sent her wire transfer instructions. The account is registered to a shell company in Delaware that traces back to him. The moment the funds hit that account, we arrest him. And you're sure the wire transfer will go through? Jennifer asked. Completely sure, Agent Chen confirmed. We've coordinated with the bank. The money is FBI funds, fully documented. The transfer will complete normally, but we'll have agents standing by at his location. Sarah looked at the wire transfer information Derek had sent her. It looked legitimate, bank name, routing number, account number. But she knew from the investigation that this account had received funds from at least 30 previous victims. Money that had disappeared into a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts, most of it never recovered. What's our approach? Sarah asked. Soft, Jennifer said. No raid, no tactical team. You tell him the transfer went through. He confirms receipt. You meet for coffee to celebrate. We arrest him quietly. The last thing we want is a scene that gets media attention before we can notify the other victims. How many total victims are we aware of? Sarah asked. Marcus pulled up another file. 47 confirmed, but we think there might be more who never reported it. Total losses estimated at just over $600,000. The room was quiet for a moment, everyone considering what that meant. $600,000 stolen from people through lies and manipulation. Let's end this, Agent Chen said. At 10:47 a.m., Sarah initiated the wire transfer from a coffee shop in Brooklyn. The funds, $10,000 of FBI money, moved electronically from one account to another. Somewhere in Derek's system, an alert would notify him that payment had been received. Sarah sent him a text. Transfer complete. Smiling face with smiling eyes, so excited about this. His response came within 2 minutes. Received. Welcome to the fund. Want to meet for coffee this afternoon to go over the paperwork? Sarah smiled. Yes. Same place as yesterday? 3 p.m. Perfect. See you then. Marcus, monitoring everything from the van, spoke through her earpiece. He took the bait. Assets are in position. We'll have eyes on you the entire time. Sarah spent the next 4 hours reviewing the case file, memorizing every detail. She wanted to look him in the eyes when they arrested him. Wanted him to know that every word, every smile, every false promise had been recorded and documented. At 2:45 p.m., she walked into the coffee shop on 5th Avenue. Derek was already there, same corner booth, same expensive watch catching the light. He stood up and hugged her like they were old friends. Congratulations, he said warmly. You've made a very smart decision. I hope so, Sarah said, maintaining her nervous persona. This is the most money I've ever invested in anything. You're going to be so glad you did this, Derek assured her. He pulled out a folder. Fake documents that he'd probably printed that morning at FedEx. Here's all your paperwork. Investment agreement, prospectus, everything you need. Sarah flipped through the documents, all professionally formatted lies. When will I start seeing returns? Well, Quantum Leap is in their growth phase right now, Derek explained. So for the first year, we're reinvesting all profits back into the company. But by next year, you should start seeing quarterly distributions. And when they go public, probably 18 to 24 months from now, that's when the real money hits. He spoke with such confidence, such certainty, as if he actually believed the fiction he'd created. I have a question, Sarah said, and for the first time, she let her real voice come through. No vocal fry. No uncertainty. Just clear, professional tone. Derek noticed the change. Sure, what is it? Quantum Leap Technologies, Sarah said. Based in Austin. Working on quantum computing breakthroughs. Series B funding round. Right, Derek said, suddenly wary. When was the company founded? 2021, I believe. It doesn't exist, Sarah said flatly. There is no Quantum Leap Technologies. There's no fund. There's no investment. It's all fake. The color drained from Derek's face. What are you? And Derek Chen. That's not even your real name, is it? Your birth certificate says Derek Lee. You changed it 3 years ago, right after you were fired from your job at Morgan Stanley for falsifying client documents. Derek stood up abruptly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sit down, Derek, Sarah said, and now her voice carried authority. She pulled out her badge. Special Agent Sarah Reeves, FBI. You're under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. For a moment, Derek just stared at the badge, his brain struggling to process what was happening. Then he ran. He bolted toward the back of the coffee shop, shoving aside chairs and startling customers. Sarah was already moving, speaking into her radio. "Suspect is running. Back exit." But Derek didn't make it to the back exit. Agent Marcus Webb was standing there, blocking his path. 2 more agents were coming through the front door. There was nowhere to go. Derek spun around, wild-eyed, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Finally, he just stopped, shoulders sagging, the fight going out of him. "Derek Lee," Marcus said, approaching with handcuffs, "you have the right to remain silent." As Marcus read him his rights, Sarah watched Derek's face. She saw the moment when the reality hit him. When he realized that everything he'd built, the fake identity, the fabricated success, the illusion of legitimacy, had just collapsed. "The dumb blonde," Derek said quietly, looking at Sarah. "You were never—" "No," Sarah confirmed. "I was never a dumb blonde. I was never a trust fund baby. I was an FBI agent doing my job. And you made it very easy." The arrest made local news but not national headlines. Derek Lee was arraigned the next day and held without bail, considered a flight risk. The assistant U.S. attorney charged him with 47 counts of wire fraud, 32 counts of securities fraud, and numerous other charges related to his 3-year scheme. But Sarah's work wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, she personally contacted every victim they could identify. She sat with them, explained what had happened, and helped them file claims with the FBI's Victim Compensation Fund. Some of the conversations were heartbreaking. There was Margaret Chen, the 64-year-old teacher from Brooklyn who had given Derek her retirement savings. $35,000 that represented 30 years of careful saving. She cried when Sarah told her that Derek had been arrested, not from relief but from shame that she'd been fooled. "I should have known better," Margaret said. "I'm a smart woman. How did I fall for this?" "You fell for it because he was very good at what he did," Sarah explained. "He studied psychology. He learned exactly how to gain trust and exploit it. This wasn't your failure, it was his crime." There was Robert and Linda Martinez, the elderly couple who had invested $50,000, money they'd been saving to help their granddaughter pay for college. Robert had a stroke 6 months after losing the money, stress-induced according to his doctors. Linda held Sarah's hand and asked the same question everyone asked. "Will we get our money back?" Sarah had to be honest. "Some of it, hopefully. We've frozen his accounts and seized his asset. But most of the money is gone. He spent it on maintaining his lifestyle, and what he didn't spend, he moved offshore where we can't easily recover it." The look of devastation on Linda's face haunted Sarah for weeks. There was James Park, a 28-year-old software engineer who had invested $15,000 he'd been saving for a house down payment. "I wanted to grow it faster," he said. "I wanted to surprise my girlfriend with a bigger down payment than she expected. Instead, I lost everything. 47 victims. 47 stories of trust betrayed and dreams destroyed. Some of them could afford the loss. They were wealthy individuals for whom 10 or 20,000 was a rounding error. But many of them couldn't. Many of them had given Derek money that represented years of sacrifice and careful planning. And Derek had taken it without hesitation or remorse. 3 months later, Derek Lee stood in federal court for his sentencing hearing. His lawyer, a public defender because Derek couldn't afford private counsel anymore, had argued for leniency. First-time offender, difficult childhood, pressure from student loans. All the standard arguments. The judge, a 60-year-old woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to Derek or the other Chen in the story, listened patiently. Then she asked if any victims wanted to make statements. Margaret Chen stood up, her hands shaking. "Your Honor, I worked as a teacher for 30 years. I loved my job, but it didn't pay much. Every month, I put away what I could. $500 here, $1,000 there. By the time I retired, I had saved $35,000. That was going to be my security. My ability to live with dignity in my final years. She looked at Derek, who couldn't meet her eyes. He took that from me. Not just the money, the security. The peace of mind. The ability to sleep at night without worrying about how I'll pay my bills. Her voice broke. I substitute teach now. At 64 years old, I'm back in classrooms because I can't afford not to be. And he took my money to buy expensive watches and fancy dinners. Robert Martinez spoke next, his voice weak from the stroke. Our granddaughter didn't go to college this year. She's working at Target instead, saving money, because we can't help her anymore. She tells us it's fine, that she'll go eventually. But I see the disappointment in her eyes. And I know that's on us, we should have been smarter. But it's also on him. He stole her future. 7 more victims spoke. Each one painted a picture of real harm, real suffering, real lives altered by Derek's greed. When they were finished, Judge Chen turned to Derek. Do you have anything to say? Derek stood up. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a cheap courtroom outfit. His confident demeanor had vanished. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know that's not enough. I know words can't fix what I did. But I am sorry. Judge Chen studied him for a long moment. Mr. Lee, I've been on the bench for 20 years. I've seen every kind of criminal, every kind of crime. And I've learned that there are 2 types of people who break the law. There are people who make mistakes, who act out of desperation or emotion or circumstance. And then there are people who make choices, who see vulnerability and exploit it, who see trust and betray it. She picked up the sentencing guidelines. You are the second type. You didn't steal because you were desperate. You stole because it was easier than working. You didn't lie because you were cornered. You lied because you enjoyed the performance. You constructed an elaborate scheme specifically designed to prey on people's hopes and dreams. Your Honor, I'm not finished, Judge Chen said sharply. What makes your crime particularly egregious is that you specifically targeted people you perceived as vulnerable. Your own testimony in depositions shows that you looked for people who seemed naive, trusting, or unsophisticated. You weaponized their good qualities against them. She looked at the victims in the gallery. These people trusted you, and you betrayed that trust in the most calculated way possible. Not once. Not in a moment of weakness, but 47 times over 3 years. Derek stood there, head bowed, as Judge Chen pronounced sentence. Derek Lee, you are hereby sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $637,000 to the victims. You will be remanded to custody immediately. 18 years. Derek's legs buckled slightly. He had expected prison, but 18 years? He'd be 50 years old when he got out. His entire 30s and 40s gone. As the marshals led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at Sarah Reeves, who was sitting in the gallery. She met his eyes steadily, her expression neutral. Derek thought about that moment in the coffee shop when he'd first seen her. When he'd thought she was an easy mark. A dumb blonde with money to burn. He thought about how carefully he'd crafted his pitch, how confident he'd been in his abilities. He had never considered that she might be smarter than him. That she might be playing him while he thought he was playing her. It was, he realized, the same mistake he'd made with all his victims. He had underestimated them. Mistaken kindness for weakness. Mistaken trust for stupidity. And it had destroyed him. After the sentencing, Sarah met with the victims who had attended the hearing. They were grateful, but their gratitude was tinged with the reality that justice didn't mean restoration. Derek would go to prison, but most of them wouldn't get their money back. The ordered restitution was symbolic. He didn't have $637,000, and prison wages wouldn't make a dent in that debt. Margaret Chen hugged Sarah. "Thank you for catching him. At least he can't hurt anyone else." "That's something," Sarah agreed. "Maybe not enough, but something." As the crowd dispersed, Marcus found Sarah standing in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Good work," he said. "Another scammer off the streets." "For 18 years, Sarah said. "But there are 1,000 more out there doing the same thing. Different names, different schemes, same result." "Can't catch them all," Marcus said pragmatically. "No," Sarah agreed. "But we can catch the ones we find. And maybe, if we're lucky, the ones we catch become cautionary tales for the ones we haven't found yet." They walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunlight. Somewhere in the city, another con artist was probably making a pitch to another victim. Somewhere, another person was deciding whether to trust a stranger with their money. Sarah couldn't stop all of it, but she could stop some of it. And for the victims who would never meet Derek Lee, who would never lose their life savings to his lies, that mattered. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, Sarah received an unexpected email. It was from Robert Martinez's granddaughter, Jessica. "Dear Agent Reeves," it read. "I wanted to let you know that I started college this semester. I got a full scholarship to City University. Turns out my grades and essays were good enough after all. My grandfather always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. He couldn't help financially like he planned, but he helped in other ways. He taught me to be persistent, to not give up, to keep trying even when things seem impossible. That man who stole from my grandparents took their money, but he didn't take those lessons. I'm going to make them proud. Thank you for making sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. Sincerely, Jessica Martinez." Sarah read the email 3 times, then saved it in a folder she kept for messages like this. Reminders of why the work mattered. Evidence that even when justice was incomplete, it still made a difference. She thought about Derek Lee, sitting in a federal prison cell, his con artist days behind him. She wondered if he understood yet. If he grasped that his real crime wasn't taking money, it was taking hope, taking security, taking the peace of mind that comes from trusting the world to be fair. She thought about the dumb blonde act she'd performed. How Derek had seen exactly what he wanted to see. How his own prejudices and assumptions had blinded him to the truth. There was irony there. Derek had made a career of exploiting people's trust and naivety. But in the end, his own assumptions, that young blonde women with money were easy targets, had been his downfall. He had scammed the wrong dumb blonde. And it had cost him everything.